this meeting of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission to order at 7:31 on October 21st. Our first order of business is to welcome the team from Arbor Haven Development joining us. And Joe, if I correctly, you've taken the lead on some of the other presentations to other commissions. So perhaps I will address my first comments to you, which is we did prior to this talk about an actual arrangement for presenting to the Conservation Commission. As you well know, we had sent you a list of questions from the Conservation Commission. The commission members have gone to generate those questions, had gone through the earlier presentation at some depth and taken that out. So I think you can make an assumption that each of the members has read it. Perhaps because of that, we do not have to spend the same length of time having you present tonight. I do know, and I have sent what Alex sent me, that the revised presentation. So perhaps we can take the first 10 minutes or so and have you at least highlight in the presentation what has changed, and perhaps what learnings you have and thoughts you have about other changes you may be making as you've talked to other commissions and at the I believe you presented to the entire town on a WebEx. And then following that, we can take our questions and not go through the questions one by one because you have answered them, but perhaps section by section, just asking the commission members if they would like further clarifications on any of the answers or would like to ask some follow-up questions. I mean, I think we can do that, as I said, going section by section. And then following that, if there are any other questions. Does that seem reasonable to you, Joe?
Yeah, I was thinking we'd do an abbreviated introduction and then just sort of delve into the questions.
Okay.
Tim, I had a question for you. After they go through this presentation, as a commissioner, are we tasked with like what are we supposed to? Are we supposed to make a recommendation? Do we do that at this meeting?
Kate, we have not gotten specific direction from the Board of Selectmen on that.
Okay.
The request was just to the Arbor Haven Development Group to present their proposal to us, which they will fulfill tonight. I do have to address that question, that very question. I do have on here another agenda item, item number 4 tonight for us, given that we have time, and we will talk. And I think it would behoove us to have a response and send a response to the Board of Selectmen.
David Lober, is that consistent with your understanding of the task put before the commission?
Yeah, I really can't answer that. I mean, typically the commissions make recommendations, but I would assume they would ask you for your recommendation.
Okay, so we haven't been formally asked, so
No,
this is just...
not. And I'm going to ask that at the meeting.
Thank you, David. Okay, and thank you, Tim.
Certainly, Kate. So with that, and Joe, I will let you and the other members of the Arbor Haven introduce themselves. But I would like to just commend the group in the preparation of the proposal. I see a lot of effort to address some concerns that have been brought up by the townspeople regarding other proposals that have come before them, and I think that's the thought and the effort to address those items is commendable. And so I just wanted to add that to the opening here, and with that, turn it over to.
All right, thank you, Tim. Our approach was really just to listen to what the townsfolk had to say about this and their concerns and trying to address all of the constituencies, not some, not none, but all. And, the resulting proposal is, I'm going to say a blend because all of the constituencies have different concerns, and in trying to meet everybody's concerns, the result is a lot of people are not going to be satisfied. A lot of people are going to be somewhat satisfied. Nobody's going to be completely satisfied. And that's just life in a certain respect. The proposal is designed to follow the general zoning of the parcel following the rewriting of the zoning ordinance back in June, where they took the parcel and decided that it's going to be a mixed use parcel with open space and residences. So that was our guiding light there. And then starting from that point, we incorporated a lot of things that people were concerned about: open space, amenities for the town, um, a, a vision of the property that's consistent with the current vision of the town, considerations about impact on schools, um, considerations about providing affordable housing. So all of these things were kind of thrown into the pot, stirring around, and what came out is what you see in front of you. The proposal is for 145 homes. 35 of them would be large lot homes. They would abut Johnson and Ansonia. There would be 110 homes on smaller lots. Those would be about 73 are going to be affordable. 62 would be market rate affordable, and 11 would be, let me restate that. 62 would be market rate age restricted homes. We have 73 age restricted homes. 62 of them are market rate, 11 are affordable. And then we have another 26 market rate homes, which are just general family homes. And then we'd have 11 affordable homes, which would be just family homes, not age restricted. That's generally the breakdown of the mix. We also included about 50 acres of open space, which we would deed back to the town. Some of that open space would be utilized for amenities for the general town folk. They would not be limited to people who lived in the development. The amenities include some basketball courts, tennis courts, volleyball courts. I mean, you have volleyball and tennis courts there now. Volleyball court looks like it's used. Tennis courts look like they need some TLC. The proposal also encompasses demolishing the existing clubhouse, which seems to be at the end of its useful life, and replacing that with a smaller, more adept clubhouse tailored for use with a town pool. Some of the details of that have not been worked out yet. In addition, we would have walking trails and bike paths running throughout the entire development. Alex has put up on your screen an overview, satellite view, if you want, of the parcel. Running around the entire perimeter of the property would be a bike and walking trail. You'd have two large crossing paths running east-west over the property, and then you have three verticals through the middle. The verticals are interlaced in the tree lines where you have double wide trees. In some of the fairways, there's double tree lines between the fairways, and we found that in walking the property, those double tree lines lent themselves very well to a bike path / walking path. The focus, one of the things we've done, there's also a playground up at the top there. That's that pink thing up in the corner of Johnson and Ansonia. That would uh, have multiple uses in addition to being a playground. We spoke to Dr. Bud at the schools, and the concept is to have a drop-off point for the school buses, so it's a little easier for everybody, and the families who would live in the development could drop their kids off at the playground and pick them up when the bus would bring them back over there. Rather than spending, Alex is obviously doing some Amazon shopping while we're talking. rather than reiterate a lot of the details which I've laid out several times, why don't we take up some of the issues that are of concern to the commission and sort of delve into some of the details that people want to hear about.
Well, Joe, can I ask, or maybe Alex can address this better? What's changed in the pitch since we looked at as a commission? We looked at one of the earliest proposals, I believe. That's what was
Besides,
available to us.
besides the price going up on your houses since the August presentation.
We just we have a market analysis, and it just constantly fluctuates with house prices. And as you know, house prices are just going crazy. We have no control over that. It's just, it is what it is.
Other changes within the,
We reduced the number of medium-sized homes and increased the number of age-restricted homes. We added a basketball court. We changed the where some of the homes will be built. Previously, we were putting homes in the bottom section here, which is actually a watershed. That, of course, doesn't make sense, and so we removed that. This is now going to be left as open space for sledding and for the town to enjoy. We're no longer having any units in the bottom here. Other changes, we have updated information from actual research, not just our own internal analysis about the number of school-age children that are on average for 3-bedroom homes. We actually are. We just got an updated number from someone saying it actually is 0.85, not the 1.15 which we used, statistically speaking, in Connecticut. But so it's still, we only got that today.
okay. So
Go ahead.
no, I'll withdraw the thought.
Okay,
Right, well, we intentionally overstated the number of school-age children based on our research to be conservative.
We changed the layout of the roads a bit to make them more community style roads, so that they're not as long and sort of distant.
Can you explain that just a bit?
Sure.
Give me a for instance, point to a for instance.
We added a connecting path right here. Previously, for someone to come from the east side of the site, they would have to drive down to the entranceway down by the former clubhouse.
Okay.
That's longer than you should drive. So we just added a connector here. Removed the dead end in here, in this section. Now it's just like that. These changes are, this is not the final way we'll be routing the roads. This is going to be adjusted as per the actual site. One of the things which we're really intent on doing is trying to keep all of these trees. We've said in all of our meetings, these are fantastic trees. We want to keep as many of them as possible. So if between the road moving and the tree staying, the road moves. Joe, is there anything else that I'm missing here of what we changed?
You covered the remix. We had fewer age restricted homes, and we roughly 50% of the project now is age restricted homes. Most of those are market rate, and some of them are affordable.
You go back to the slide, please, that shows the breakdown of how many houses by affordable, over 55, and regular, please.
This one, right?
What's the decision guiding increasing the age restricted?
We wanted to generate, it's the benefit and burden analysis. Every home that's built creates a tax benefit for the town. There's revenues that's generated from it. What comes with a home usually is children, which is a burden on the school system. And what we did was we tried to maximize tax revenue and mitigate some of the burden on the school district. So that was the motivating factor.
So the 22 affordable homes, does that encompass age restricted and regular?
There is no rule about should any percentage of affordable homes be age restricted or family oriented or whatever. It just doesn't exist. It's not something that any legislature or bureaucracy has bothered to consider.
Yeah, that wasn't my question. I thought in the original proposal that some of the age restricted were also going to be set aside as affordable.
We here's how the analysis works. The 35 large homes meet the definition of residential A zoning under the town's zoning ordinance. You don't count those when you're calculating your affordable housing component. So the 110 homes that are on the smaller lots, generally speaking, they would be what the town defines as residential B zoning, which is roughly a 15,000 square foot lot, 150 by 100. Those factor into the calculation of affordable homes. There's 110. The rule is you got to have 20%, so that's 22 affordable homes. Further than that, there is no definition. So we simply.
Joe, I think her question was, I think there'll be 11 will be age restricted and 11 will be for families. We're not sure about that mixture just yet. It's really up in the air.
Okay.
But that was
Thank you.
that was where we came. That was where we came down to that initially. Just seemed fine. We just sort of decided why not.
Well, we just pick 50-50 as a starting point. There's no rule that says it's got to be this or that. We just pick 50-50.
Any other comments or questions on the changes to the proposal pitch?
Yes, down in the bottom there where you said you found it was wetlands or waters or whatever. You said you removed anything from down there and made it into green space. If I am hearing you correctly, does that mean you added onto the park? What did you do with the building, the things that were there?
Well, there was homes there, and what we did was we moved things around to take into account that that's the sledding hill that goes down from the current clubhouse and pool area, and that area actually falls in a watershed. It's not a swamp area or some sort of wetlands. It's defined as a watershed. And rather than, technically you could build in watershed, but we decided let's not mess with it, just leave it the way it is. And we just incorporated it into the green space and just moved some other stuff around. That's all.
But does that mean that that area was added to the 50 acres that were to be deeded back to the town, or is that simply?
Yes. We were initially going to develop that. As you can see, there was a road here. This is the older version. So on the top is the older version, on the bottom is the newer one. We had roads that we were putting in there. We were planning putting homes. And we've now decided to leave that area as just open space for the town to do with as it chooses. Those roads are gone.
The proposal was always to give 50 acres to the town, and it's just a question of, how you move things around to get there.
I think it's possible that Sharon's going to speak if she's on mute.
I'm off mute. Thank you for noticing that.
That was,
So I'm just clarifying that it seems to me, when I look at the 50 acres that have been given to the land, given as, would be given back, the portion of it that's between the through highway and the road that went down to where the clubhouse was is pretty much, there's nothing you can do with that. So that's not really a great gift. The area which is above where you have the tennis courts is all rocky ledge. So it would be very hard to build on that. And now the area you're now giving us is watershed, which I appreciate that it has wetlands in it. But really you're trying to maximize your utilization in the land that you've given, which does have some continuity except for the clubhouse and the tennis courts, really isn't land that you could use anyway. Is that correct? I mean, you could, but it would be a lot more work and it would be less appealing.
technically, that's not accurate. If you go and look at the proposal that was put out, I think was Toll Brothers, up above where we have the yellow pieces, which is the tennis court and the volleyball court. They had about 20 homes up there in that hill. All right, so it's very easy to build on that. We just don't want to tear down trees, so that's why we left it.
It looks like there's roads through there though, so there'll be houses.
Now, what you're looking at there is a bike path, which would just wend its way through the trees.
That's also Woodfield, Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's an existing town road, the Woodfield that runs through there.
Right.
Joe, about how many acres do you think will be added from the walking paths and the bike trails?
Well, we don't calculate that in terms of the 50 acres that are being donated to the town. The way that we've constructed the project is to put the walking paths as a public use on private property. So each homeowner is giving up about 12 and a half feet for use as, so if you have two lots back to back, it's a 25-foot swath. And that would constitute the easement area for the bike path. And if you calculated, we did a rough calculation because there's about 2 something miles of bike path / walking path in this project. And if you take that times 25-foot swath, etc., it's about another 10 to 12 acres of land that you could arguably claim as open space. We just say it's a bike path.
So the trails that go through the property, those will still be public access. Everyone will still be able to walk through and enjoy the trees and the hilly ground there. It's probably going to be great for dog walking and exercise, stuff like that. And that will continue to be mixed through the property.
You say that the trails and bike paths are going to be the responsibility for them is going to be the homeowners association.
I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Pardon? I'm sorry?
I don't know who was talking. That was not us.
My question is, what happens if the homeowners association decide suddenly they don't want bike paths or trails or whatever, or they can't afford to keep them up or whatever?
Yeah, well, tough luck on them because it's a permanent easement and they're not going to have a choice about it. If they buy the house, that's the cost that comes with it, just like property taxes.
I have a question that goes along with that. I see the Fitzgerald property and the amount of maintenance those trails take in terms of they take a fair amount of maintenance and garbage collection and all sorts of things. Who who's the responsible people for that?
The homeowners association is responsible for that, not the town.
And what jurisdiction, if they're not doing a good job, does the town or people in the town have to have any leverage over that?
I doubt they would have any leverage because it's private property.
So basically, if somebody just let weeds grow up and didn't do anything about it, there's nothing that anybody in the town or the town authorities could do about it.
You're asking a question generally I wouldn't know the answer to, but since it is private property, I don't know how the town would be able to do anything. The homeowners association rules and regulations would have enforcement provisions in it. And, I don't know if you've ever had any experience with a homeowners association, but the homeowners association can enforce the maintenance and charge the homeowner and put a lien on their property if they don't pay.
And my understanding is there was another private development that was supposed to be have the homeowners take care of the roads, and they didn't, and the town had to take it over. Have you heard of that ever happening in your experience?
It's happened. Yes, I know that. In our instance here, again, it's the same situation. These are private roads on private property. They would be open to the public, of course. Anybody could drive into the development. There's no gatehouses or anything like that. And again, the homeowners
But enough
association would
could
be
the
responsible.
association-
The
could the
homeowners
association-
association, the homeowners association would be responsible for the maintenance and snow plowing and et cetera with respect to the roads. And again, homeowners associations, as a general rule, do have enforcement provisions in them.
And I guess this is sort of not a conservation question, but would they have the jurisdiction to put up a gate if they decided to?
I wouldn't know the answer to that right now.
We,
Is
Joe,
there
I-
a provision that they can't
What?
make it a gated community, or is it just an open question?
It's an open question. I mean, you could always write an easement into the deeds that says you can't do that. I don't know why somebody would want to do that.
our intention is to avoid things of that nature. So if we can, just
Oh,
to understand
once-
the general tenor of this, the plan is to make it so that this path is available to the town. How that's going to be enforced, et cetera, is something we're going to work on. But the
But
intention
once
is-
you've left, you don't have jurisdiction to continue that, and you're only there for 3 years, correct?
That's correct. It would belong to the homeowners.
Okay, so I have a specific question as to about design that I'm quite curious about. So, because on your picture, I don't see, I see this picture, I guess I see the roadway, the walking trail or the bike trail. And there's another picture you showed that shows the roads. Can you show a picture that shows all the lots with the intended houses and what that would look like?
Well, we haven't laid out all the lots. We did it using a map coverage, and we figured out the square footage we have available and how much each lot is, and then we
So there's
generally
no
speaking,
picture that shows a mock-up of
Well,
145
there's-
pounds houses and what they would look like.
there's some mock-up here showing here's some large lots on Johnson and here's some smaller lots in the middle. But you don't do that at this point. You do that when you get in and you start doing your civil engineering and you figure out exactly where
Wait.
your
We're just trying to get an idea as a conservation commission how densely populated. We aren't wanting you to say where the houses are and what shape. And so I think it's reasonable to have a sense of how.
as we said, the interior lots, which would be in the green and the yellow here, would be about roughly 15,000 square feet each. That's your density.
I know, but so you have no picture that shows us how many houses and what it would look like. I mean, I think for us to make a good recommendation, we'd need to see how densely populated. There's no other development in all of Woodbridge that, aside from on the flats, is anywhere near this density. So the things I've been involved with, the Elderly's or the Busman's property, are so much larger that I can't get a sense of how much property, how much land would be disturbed, because you're saying approximately 20% of the land, and I'm assuming that's 20% after you've excluded those 50 acres, would be yards, bike paths, public amenities. And I just can't quite figure that out. Because-
That's not what was meant when we answered the question disturbed. Disturbed, as we
Well,
defined it,
that's what
is
I wrote the question, so that's what I'm trying to figure out.
right. But I answered the question, and I answered it specifically saying that disturbed is defined as you rip it up. So the ripped up part is going to be basements, and you can figure that out pretty easily by taking the
No,
square
no, no,
footage of
no,
the
that's
house and-
not what,
Oh, okay.
from the perspective of the Conservation Commission, we're concerned about any time you're destroying natural habitat, not anytime you're creating a basement. So I'm trying to get a sense of how much land is a nice open field with indigenous plants and how much you're going to disturb that, and how concerned we should be about the quality of the extent and the significance of that disturbance for this acreage that's important to our community's greenway. So could you recalculate that?
The answer to that is you have 50 acres of open space, which is dedicated to the town. That's not going to be disturbed other than where you've got your amenities like your tennis court, et cetera.
But that's, so a part of that is going to be disturbed, like at least maybe 6 or 7 acres of that.
You're actually going to have less than you have now because we're getting rid of that clubhouse, which is.
But you're going to be disturbing the environment around it to get rid of the clubhouse.
I would call that an improvement rather than a disturbance, but that's a semantic difference.
No, it's not. It's conservation. It's how much you're disturbing the natural habitat. Even if it's distorted, you're still affecting it. So that's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, if you want to define it that way, then yes, the answer is wherever you have a parking lot, we're ripping it up and taking it out. That's disturbed. Wherever you have a clubhouse, we're ripping it up and taking it out. That's disturbed. Right? Wherever we're putting in a road, that's disturbed. Wherever we're putting in a house, that's disturbed. You're going to have about, I'm going to say, using your definition of disturbed, you're going to have about 50% of this parcel disturbed.
Okay.
I mean, it is a golf course. It's not, it's not exactly natural right now.
Well, it's changed from just being a golf course. I have another question.
So, Sharon, let me jump in here, just,
Yeah.
To put us along the lines that I suggested, and perhaps we should follow to make sure we get through the questions that we'd previously asked and get to clarify answers. We were gonna, and you had just started with a question about the design, so, and was our first group of questions and answers. So maybe I can ask that we ask all our questions about the design questions, or follow-ups or new questions about design. So I wanted to open that up to everybody on the commission who's on the call.
I just want to add one more thing. We are planning on building on the fairways. We're not planning on building in the tree line. As a note.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So other questions or follow-up questions within design?
I have a question. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes. I do have a question regarding the homeowners association, and the fact that they are required to pay homeowner association dues, but at the same time, the public is allowed to use private a bike trail and to go inside the domain of the homeowners association. I don't think that that's practical, and I do believe the homeowners association does have a right to impose restrictions. They do that all the time. They impose restrictions all the time on the public. So I don't think from a practical standpoint, people are going to be allowed, especially if they fence it in or have some type of barrier around it, which they often do, I don't think that that's going to hold. Having the public being able to go into a homeowners association, you have a license to go in as a business. Everyone has a license to go in to perform business as a contractor, but to be able to use it as personal space and to enjoy it when other people are maintaining and paying for it, I think that there is going to possibly be litigation regarding that issue later on. I just don't think that they will allow the public to come in to use that, even with an easement on it, especially since they are maintaining it and paying for it.
So if you're talking, you're on mute.
No, I'm not talking. That was a comment. I listened to the comment.
Well, in your experience, do people change those things so that the public can't go in?
Our approach is to use a deed restriction when you buy the property, so they wouldn't be able to change it.
Sounds like it may be a question for the town attorney.
I think it's an important question because that's
Yeah.
a big part of the benefit that could possibly be derived from being there.
They can impose a restriction. For example, one homeowners association restricted the use of lock boxes. They just said we don't want them on the doors, and they were able to enforce that. Those are the types of restrictions a homeowner association can do. That's a minor one,
Yeah.
but they can impose some type of they could be time limitations, they could be limitations with days. I don't think that they're going to be able to pay and maintain all of that and then allow anybody to come in at any time that they want. I don't think that's something that's going to be enforced later on.
Right. Yeah, this sounds like one of the concerns we should raise as we go back to the Board of Selectmen with our thoughts after we've listened and thought about the presentation from Arbor Haven developers. So Val, I would make a note of that, and let's include that in our feedback.
I'm not sure if this fits under design, but any toxic waste that might be there from the golf course, is that Arbor Haven's responsibility to clean that up?
We don't know the answer because we haven't done an environmental survey yet.
But if there were, would you be responsible for cleaning it?
Again, we don't know what's there, so you can't answer the question.
But are you thinking that the town might be responsible if there is something there, or you're responsible if it's less? I mean, under how do you make that decision?
You do the analysis and you find out what's there. You don't make decisions in
I
a
know,
vacuum.
but if we approve it as a town and then there's toxic stuff there, could it end up costing an extensive amount of money that the taxpayer is responsible for? Or is it something that you understand is a possibility and you'd cover it?
Let's play a game here. Let's suppose the property is swamped with lead. All right.
No, I'm specifically talking about chemicals we know are there where they were stored from the golf course.
Well, I read through a report that was done some years ago, and it was stuff about cleaning supplies and lawnmower gasoline and stuff like that. This is not.
I'm sure they used fertilizer. I mean, they had to use all sorts of things to insecticide. Who knows what they used, but we know that it's in a concentrated area and it's a known factor. So
Yeah, there's a I think it's over by the that storage shed there. That's sort of off from behind the clubhouse.
yeah. So given that it's a known thing and in your interest in purchasing this and building, you're having to be factoring in that as a possible cleanup site. So are you thinking that if you check it out and you find has, extensive more than you thought, that you'll then go back to the town and say, it's your job? Or are you saying, I'm taking this land lock, stock, and barrel, and I'll make it sure it's adequately dealt with so that homeowners aren't at any risk?
Well, the first rule is you never put the homeowner at risk. All right, safety
Okay,
is,
no,
of
I
course.
understand that.
Okay. You're asking the question about, well, there,
I'm trying to protect the town from a conservation conundrum and where we're hoping to get profit from this and it ends up costing a lot of money to clean it up, which undermines the wish of the public to have it be a profitable thing for the town and not a burden.
well, the flip side of it is that if there's toxic waste on there, who put it there? Not us.
So you're basically saying it would be the town's responsibility to get rid of it for you to want to it's the town's responsibility.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is you analyze the facts, find out what's there, and then you make a decision.
But if we've already agreed as a town with a referendum to let you build this, and then we find there's something toxic and it costs $10 million, don't we need some assurance that you'll pay for it and we won't? Otherwise, why would we keep, why would we try to make it a place where there's homes?
No, let's go with what you just said. If there's a $10 million cleanup here, we're not building a thing. We're walking away.
So we might be doing all this work with all these committees, and then we investigate it, and then you realize it's not worth it to you, and you walk away.
Well, that's a risk you have with any developer. But
Okay, I'm just
our-
trying to understand. You're
our-
not saying
our-
we've.
Our
Right.
analysis is find out the facts first, figure out what has to be done. All right. Once you know that, then you can have an intelligent discussion about who's responsible for what.
Okay, I understand that, but I'm just thinking, you're not saying we've allotted, $1.3 million for that cleanup, which is what we suspect it might be. Or I'm just totally guessing, but there's no mitigation that you've calculated into your risk benefit factors for purchasing these.
No, we have an assumption that there's some cost to clean up here. But as I've said, the way that you approach it and the way that any business person approaches it is you analyze the facts. So you send in your people, do the analysis, find out what exactly has to be done. All right. If it's more than a reasonable amount, then you have a discussion about it.
And at what point does that happen? Like now before the town goes before the town referendum or after that?
I don't know the answer to that.
So
I'm gonna just say it's just about 8:15. I think that Tim intended to kind of do a very broad overview of our previously submitted questions to see if this group had anything that came back after the answers from the developer. Is that right, Tim?
Right, I just wanted to go sort of section by section and see if anybody needed to ask any follow-ups. I think Sharon has within design a little bit, and so, but you're right, Kate. So if we can, anybody else have a follow-up on any of the design answers? I did have one, not hearing from anybody else. It was just on the composition, the permeable composite used on the road and bike walking paths. Are your experience? Thank you for the picture. Um, well, there are really two questions. That require any special equipment for the cleaning of snow plowing, and how often? What's the maintenance cycle for these types of roads?
Generally speaking, you don't need special equipment for snow plowing. You just snow plow it. The cycle will depend obviously on usage, weather, erosion, etc. The design is intended to be extremely durable and very cost effective.
Do they get re-rolled every year? That type of thing?
It depends upon the usage. The buildup is a little different than what people are used to because people think of gravel roads and stuff, and they're used to tracks and all this stuff. That's
Right.
not what this is. The base is the key to making this work. You have to think of big chunks like you would see under railroad tracks.
Yep.
All right, that's your base. And you know from experience, railroad tracks don't move around that much. You know, you get these 1,000-ton trains rolling over them, and the things just sit there. So we're using the same base, and then what we do is we put two additional layers on top of it. There's a smaller gravel that goes on top of the big gravel. The big gravel gives you base permeability, allows water to run off. The smaller gravel gives you the ability to fill in the rough spots if anybody's ever tried to walk on the gravel around railroad tracks. You can't because you'll twist your ankle and nothing flat. So the smaller gravel allows you to level out, and then you use something like item 4 on top of it to give you a smoother type of surface that you can walk, bike, or drive upon.
The inspiration for this style of road is actually the ancient Roman roads.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing which is intended to stand the test of time.
Yeah. I wouldn't imagine these would be high use roads and paths in the scale of things.
Yeah, well, the picture that Alex has put up there, that's actually something we did up near my lake house. This was coincidentally, the picture was taken after Hurricane Ida. And what you can see is in the lower right quadrant, there's that was a gully. And we filled that in with the bigger blocks, and then we ran it over the road as well. And then the upper part is where you have the smaller gravel in the item 4. We had 20 inches of rain in 36 hours, and nothing moved. And so that's about as definitive an answer you can get for how does it sit.
Okay, moving on, if nothing else on design, then any follow-ups on affordable housing questions and answers? All right. How about open space? I think we've talked about the 50 acres. All right, from members of the commission, any other questions on the build out? Questions on the answers, I guess.
I just, I think what you said is there's gonna be no blasting or unlikely to be any blasting, and you're not planning on taking material out or bringing it in terms of fill and stuff?
Well, as I think I mentioned, the trenching generally would not require blasting. Excavation for basements, I don't know the answer to that because we haven't had the civil engineers analyze the entire layout. As a general rule, I'm saying that since you're building in fairways, which are generally topsoil, you're going to be able to put your basements in to a large extent without blasting. It does not mean it's not going to happen. I will say it probably will happen. I will say also it's probably going to be sporadic rather than incessant. You know, there are rocky outcroppings there. I've seen them. I've walked it. So you know, it just depends upon where you have to put the house, or want to put the house, I guess you would say. The whatever is excavated, the intent is to reuse it on the site. So you have to do some leveling. You have to do some road beds. To the extent we are pulling up stones and stuff like that, we'll have a grinder and just grind it down into the right size gravel we need for paths and roadways. And actually we find it's a far more efficient way of doing things than having 20-ton dump trucks bring in gravel when you probably can generate some of it right there.
Okay.
Other questions on the build out?
Um, yeah, well, I'm not sure whether this is built out or not. I have it at the bottom of the page here.
Okay.
Who, who is designing these trails?
We have a civil engineer to do that.
The walking trails and bike trails and so forth?
Yeah, it's the same build out as the roads, just on a smaller scale. So, the civil engineer is going to walk the property and lay them out. The intent is to lay them out in the tree lines. We're not using any petrochemicals. We're just using rocks, if you want to put it on its basic level. And as you know, roots move around, but the rocks will move around with them. And yes, the maintenance guy is going to have to go around with a rake and a shovel and level some spots out every spring. Um, it's not a high tech operation. Let's put it that way.
My other question is entirely different idea. What are the building maintenance requirements, and who again is in charge of overseeing that things are kept up?
I'm
Even
not sure. I'm
in
not
their
sure I
houses.
understand. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well,
Which
I mean, people own their houses and maybe they don't maintain the roofs properly, or somebody throws a baseball through the window and they just leave it be, or they paint the house purple polka dots or whatever. Is there any kind of a oversight of this type of thing?
our intention is no.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions on the build out, then deeding and protections over time. And I'll start with a question there. We've talked a lot about the walking bike paths going where they can through the double row of trees. I believe from prior knowledge, listening to the presentations, those bike paths and trees will be on private property. They'll be parts of the lots that are adjacent to them. Is that correct?
That's correct. We would let's take one of the paths. All right, so let's take the middle vertical one, which kind of runs down the middle right there.
Yeah.
Alex is running that. All right, so you can see roads on either side of the.
Right.
All right, your houses are going to back up to those trees, and there's a restrictive easement preventing them from cutting down the trees, unless of course it's for safety reasons or whatever. The back part of the lot, the last 12 and a half feet, will be private property, but will be subject to a public use easement,
Right.
which would prevent the homeowner from erecting a fence or whatever, and allowing the public to use the pathway.
Right.
And, I think the question that was raised before is valid. Is somebody going to be allowed to walk through there at 3 o'clock in the morning, et cetera? Probably not. All right. But that's a detail that has to be worked out, I'm sure.
Yeah. I almost have to digress to ask my question. The homeowners association, the agreement, is that written, drafted initially by you as the developer, or how does the language in there get put together?
Well, generally, first of all, there's a lot of standard forms for that. It
Yeah.
depends upon what level of interference you want to have in the homeowner's life. Our preference is less interference rather than more interference. the question was asked, well, are they going to restrict you on what color you can paint your house? And
Right.
the answer is no. This is, we're not into that.
Yeah.
The concept here is that, people are adults. Hopefully they're responsible. Generally they are.
Okay, so let me get to my question then. Is there any intent to be able to allow because those bike paths, walking paths are valuable to the whole community, not even thinking about the public in Woodbridge, but just the community there that will use them most frequently, probably. Was there any something built into those homeowners agreements that would allow the association to replace some of those trees as they age and need to be taken down or are blown down by a storm?
The the general answer would be yes, because you have a public use over private property. So the way the easement is written, it's more the easement than the homeowners association.
Oh, okay. My
All right.
naivete there.
So it's more because the easement is more binding because it's built into the deed.
Sure.
All right. So when the person buys the property, he knows beforehand,
Yep.
these are the terms I've bought this on.
Okay.
And I can't do anything about it because I can't create something I don't have. So that's how you create some teeth, if you will, to it. Um, then comes the other part, which is, how do you pay for this? And the homeowners association is going to be part of the deed to the homeowner. It says there is a homeowners association. We prefer to use what we call homeowners light, which means that it's going to be limited to um, paying for the maintenance of the roads and paying for the maintenance of the bike paths, but not more than that, because we really don't believe the homeowners association should be sticking their nose in people's business.
Yeah. So I guess it would be an interpretation whether the trees are part of the bike path.
Well, the trees technically are on private property
Right.
and belong to the homeowner.
Right.
Right. However, the homeowner also has a deed restriction which says you can't just chop down the trees.
Hmm.
So, one of the beauties of this property is the variety and age of the trees.
Right.
You can't prevent them from ever chopping a tree down because, as you just said, trees age, they die, they get diseased, they fall over, and you have to take that into account because that's just nature.
Yeah.
Right. Um, I mean, we hadn't really got into the issue of replacing trees, but it's private property. So if the homeowner wants to replant, that's their choice, I suppose.
All right. Any questions? Sustainability, environmental?
I have a question, Tim.
Go ahead,
Linda.
please.
Do you foresee, because this is probably called a PUD, a planned unit development, do you foresee having to have a master insurance policy for this particular HOA, or will just individual insurance policies be sufficient?
You're talking about homeowners insurance?
Yes, having a master policy to cover the entire, most attached condominiums, not necessarily detached, have a master policy, have a master insurance policy. Do you foresee that happening with this particular PUD, or just having the individual homeowners insurance?
I would, all right, we have 145 homes. Um, 22 of them will be affordable, which will be attached in some way, shape, or form. So those 22 are going to be some sort of, you know, I don't want to say condominium type setup, but we haven't really figured out the exact design yet. There's going to be a party wolf, that's for sure. The rest of it, the other 123 are single family, and everybody's got their own insurance.
So I just clarify that there will be some market rate attached homes. It's not going to be entirely affordable. It will be a mixture of market rate attached and affordable attached.
No, I understand that. I'm talking about the insurance aspect for normal condominiums because you're talking about private roads now, and you're also that has to include liability on these private roads. So
Yeah, well, the homeowners association will take out whatever policy they deem appropriate for the circumstances. But the
right, that's what
question,
I'm,
I
I'm
asked the
asking.
question about, is this about homeowners and their homes, homeowners insurance? That was what I said.
Right, but
And
sometimes there are two policies on attached and sometimes detached housing. One is the individual, and then you have the master policy for the common areas. And that's what I was asking. Is there any consideration for a master policy for the common areas that you've kind of pointed out here? Some of the roads, some of the bike trails, these are common areas if they're not, if they're private. So it's not just the structural part, there's liability part. So that's what I was asking about, the master and policy for insurance.
well,
For
you're going to probably have insurance over the common use areas, but you're going to have separate policies for each home, obviously.
right, right. That's what I'm asking. You have to have two. There's usually two on on a condominium, or or
It would probably be done through the homeowners association because it's more efficient
right.
than layering two policies on each house. You have
No,
one,
it is done through the condominium association, and part of that process, for example, if this was attached. For the attached part, in order to get a mortgage, they're going to be looking at the mortgage company will be looking at that master policy to see what is covered. That's part of that process. I
Yes,
just didn't know if you had talked about the master policy about insurance, because you're referring to a lot of bike trails and a lot of areas, and you're saying it's private, and so you have to have insurance. It's called a master policy, in addition to the private policies. And the
Yes, yes,
homeowners association has.
yes,
Hmm?
the HOA will have that. We haven't worked out the details of that yet. But the plan that is like
Gina on top of it.
nope, we're going to keep the old house there and do
There
go
is
around
no
it.
old house left. The old house burned. It's simply the site of
I saw what looked like an old snack bar there.
yes, but that's just that's an old new snack bar. The site of Roger Sherman's farm, the house, the building that used to be the clubhouse for the old golf course burned. But the site still exists. And is probably part of the trail, the Roger Sherman Trail that goes from Sherman, Connecticut down to the Grove Street Cemetery.
Well, if somebody has some information about that, we'd be very interested in hearing it.
I'll get it to you.
Thank you, Barbara. Anybody else in the town impact recreation area?
I have a question about that area where the playground is. Are there, I don't see any roads. Is that a recreation area? That, it seems like some open space there. Is that true? Like between the two walking paths? I don't,
Well, this is intended to be a rough diagram. When we get down with a civil engineer and actually plot everything out, I think when Alex put this in, he just put the bike path next to the road because there's an access road. We're coming from, what is it, Fairview and Johnson and entering in there. So I think he just put the bike path right next to it, whether it actually goes right next to the road or you could see there's a tree line running there from that sort of diagonally from the playground.
so the disturbed area may increase near, closer to the playground and not have that that open space.
We don't know the answer because we haven't plotted out everything in detail yet. But I'll go back to my previous statement, roughly 50%.
So will you, when will we
use-
see a plan that is the actual plan so we can make an evaluation based on that? Will we ever get to see that?
Well, yes, if the project goes forward, of course that comes.
But before the project goes forward, before we make, the town has to make a referendum on it, will we see the exact, your total intentions, or is it more of a rough guess?
We can refine it. If you're looking for precision, that's not going to happen before the referendum. We can lay out lots, generally speaking, that would cover the area. So you could, if you want to see, here's how the lots kind of lay out. But if somebody comes back later and say, oh, it's not exactly that, the answer is that's right. It's not exactly that because it was rough and not precise. The civil engineers have to come in and, do your surveys, lay your lot lines, figure out where things go, etc.
And just one more question, on Johnson Road, there's houses right along Johnson Road too, so that space that has no roads isn't an open space. That will be how, those will be where the larger houses are.
The open space would be, I think Alex has the picture up there where you see the green swaths.
Okay, so all the other
That's-
spaces that don't have roads may indeed have roads and houses at some point. They're not actually open space.
No, they will have houses.
Oh.
The intent is to build the houses down the middle of the fairways. We run the road down the middle of the fairway and we put the house on either side of the road. And by running the roads down the middle of the fairway and putting the houses on either side of the road, you don't have to chop down trees, which is one of our goals.
Okay, I see. So large lots of large houses, you haven't laid out those houses in any way. I mean, okay, I now understand that you're going to use all the purple space to put larger houses in. None of that will be open space.
Can you go back to the former map for a second?
Yeah.
There is a tiny, tiny straight line there near, I guess it's the outside bat, on the left-hand side that goes from probably Ansonia Road right down that line there. What is that?
That is an artifact from importing the satellite image from Google. It is,
I'm not hearing you. I'm sorry.
that is an artifact from importing imagery from satellite imagery. It's
Oh, okay.
it just
So it's
happened.
meaningless.
Yeah, it's
okay.
it's just there. It will
Okay.
not actually be there.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
Sorry for sticking in there. Apologies.
all right. I'd like to move towards wrapping up, maybe with a last round of last question from everyone. And again, I'll start off. My question is around the homeowners association again, which we've touched on often, in the multiple parts. Are the dollars for the homeowners association, is that assessed equally to each homeowner? And two, are those homeowners fees part of the calculation for affordable housing, or are those just something else that another bill that the homeowner, affordable or not, will have to pay?
The homeowners fees get factored into the cost of the affordable housing. I believe that's the law on that.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
And as a general rule, the fees, since they encompass, again, we're going with what we call homeowners light.
Yep.
Which is, simply maintenance of common spaces. Everybody uses the common space. It's a roundable fee.
So what fee?
I missed that.
Ratable, meaning that it's per unit the same for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Nomenclature not known to us common folk, or non-real estate folks. Dave Lober, I just want to make sure I know at one point you had a question having to do with perhaps the town right of way, or if I'm saying that term correctly, maybe along Insonia Road. Did that get answered for you at some point?
I don't think so.
Can you frame that question, or should
I'm
I?
trying to remember what that question was.
Well, if I remember, and I'm hoping I'll jog your memory, it was something to do with the fact, and if we can put up the slides with the bike paths and walkways.
Oh,
It's
I
something to
remember.
do with the
Yeah.
fact that some of those might be over where the town has a certain distance from the road.
Yes. I remember the question. So it appears that the bike paths on Johnson Road and the bike path on Ansonia Road are in that they're in the frontage of those homes. Is that correct? In other words,
Yes. Yes.
those are okay. So, and you're talking about a 50-foot setback on those larger homes, is that correct?
That's what I understand the zoning regulation requires.
All right, so there's an easement from the center of the road out, which encompasses something like 10 feet of the front lawns, front yards of those yards that are adjacent to those roads. If the roads need to be widened, so that can be taken. So you have 50 feet, you have 10 feet roughly, which is town eminent domain. And then you have these bike paths on top of it. So how much uninterrupted front lawn are you going to have on these big houses?
The bike path goes in the 50-foot setback.
Right.
So it's layered on top of it. It's not 1, 2, and 3. It's 1 and 2, and the bike path goes in 2. So you have your 10 feet where the town can take if they need in the future for widening the road.
Yeah.
Then the property line, the unencumbered property line starts. In there, the first 15 feet, you have your bike path. And then the next 35 feet is just the remainder of the setback. The bike path is encompassed in the setback because it's on private property.
So you're going to have basically a 35-foot lawn in front of these homes.
Well, those homes, I did a rough analysis. The lots would be roughly 200 feet wide and 350 feet deep.
Right.
That gives you 65,000 square feet.
Right.
So the houses are not going to be 50 feet back from the road. They're going to be further back than that, probably.
So the setback is going to be more than 50 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
The required setback is 50. You can't be closer than 50, but
right.
These things may be 75, 100, or 150. Just depends upon where. I think when we get down and actually start designing and laying out, etc., they're going to be at least 100, 125 feet back from the road. The intent is to make it sort of an enclave rather than having it face the road.
I get that. What about that creek along Johnson Road?
The one that runs.
The one that runs parallel to Johnson Road.
Are you talking about the one that runs sort of down the middle of between the two fairways?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like on the seventh fairway.
Well, there's two fairways there where Alex is moving the cursor back and forth, and there's kind of a, notice there's kind of a creek in there.
I'm moving it on the creek. Creek is right there. So the creek would be through the property, would run through people's property.
Yeah, it's part of it, we'll have to have the civil engineer, um, it's probably going to be dug out a bit so that it runs and drains a little better. Because you don't want to create a swampy situation. And I noticed some of the terrain there is a bit swampy because the brook, if you want to call it that, is running over its banks in some spots. There's no maintenance going on today, so it just kind of does whatever water does.
Will you be involved with wetlands dealing with that?
This is a fairway up here. I don't believe that's a wetland. The wetlands are further down by.
Well, if it's a creek, it's a wetlands.
Well, we're not building in a wetland, that's for sure.
Well, you'll have it assessed for wetlands?
Well, the houses will be back from whatever wetlands are there. Yes.
So, but I think to David Lower's point, if there's wetlands determined on one side, which requires 100-foot setback or 50-foot setback, and then there's a 50-foot setback, it might not be able to place those houses as far back as you might.
We have 350
That may
feet.
affect how
We
far
have
back the house
350
is
feet
set.
to work with.
You have 350 feet from the front to back,
Yes.
so you're that's probably enough.
If you have a 50-foot wide wetlands area around the creek, you got 25 on each side for each house. So that gives you your 50 feet right there.
I think it's 50 feet, 100. Well, I don't know what the laws are right now, but I think there's more of a setback than that on each side.
Whatever it is, we'll respect the wetland standards. We're not planning on screwing those up. We actually
Thank you.
After a heavy rain, and we actually noticed the frogs on the northeast of the site, hopping along. We're aware that there's stuff living there, and we plan to disturb as little as possible.
Okay, that's good.
Kate, Sharon, any final question?
No.
Val or Barbara?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that normally the condo uh condo fees are based on square footage. Normally, they're based on the square footage, so that there is a disparity between condo fees between the attached condos and the properties that will be on the 1 acre properties. It will be based on size and possibly also number of bedrooms and bathrooms.
That
So
makes
it's
sense. I have, forgive me, we haven't dug into the HOA fees yet. What you're saying sounds right. Of course, if you can lower the burden on some people who are not as wealthy, we would like to do that. Intention is to just keep the site well maintained, not to eat everyone over the head.
Okay, I think that's probably a wrap then, Joe.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity, Tim. Appreciate it.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and we appreciate the time you put into answering the questions and tonight, and certainly, and thank you, Harvey and Alex. And
Barbara, please do send along that information you mentioned. That is something we didn't have.
the historic site.
Oh, yes, of course.
And Barbara, it'd be good to, send that along to everyone on the commission, I think.
Yes. I certainly will.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Okay, we are at 8:51. We target to maybe wrap up at 9:15. Is that doable for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, item number 2 on the agenda, I previously sent out minutes for the August 19th, September 20th, and September 30th. Hoping that, well, I guess I had asked for comments to come back if there are changes to be made. Didn't see any, but would take any needed changes now. And what I've come to realize is that the easiest way perhaps to amend the minutes, if when we need to, is to just put the changes in the minutes, and therefore the original documents can stay the same and the changes can be in the minutes. I believe that's acceptable procedure. Any changes to any of the minutes that we've submitted? Not hearing any, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 19th, September 20th, and September 30th.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Kate. I don't believe we need any further discussion, so we'll call that for a vote. I probably, Sharon's taking the minutes, so I guess if you're, Val, we'll need you to be verbal. We can't see you, but everyone else, if you're in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
And Sharon, the way I'm seeing it is everyone who we can see has said aye. Note down everyone. Oh, and then Val?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And passes without dissent. Thank you very much. The third item is FOI debrief. It's been a number of, seems like a couple months now, at least, since the town had the session on FOI. There was a note that went out today with 3 items, and it seems to me it came from Betsy, but I would guess it was a Beth note at the end, and it did have the link to the FOI session in it. So if you did not get to attend the session, I'd encourage you to look in at the video when if you have the opportunity. And my simple item tonight is just to give anyone an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions if afterwards you thought of it about FOI and had any questions.
Yes, I have a question.
Go right
I have a
ahead, Barbara.
question. At our special meeting, we brought up the idea that had been heard about how many people can meet together without it being an official meeting, and also the question about the combination of different parties. And Kate was going to speak about that and find out for us, and I'm wondering whether you got a chance to do that, Kate.
No, thank you for the reminder, Barbara. Tom is excellent, so I will reach out to him. I'm making myself a note now.
As far as the first part of that question, the 3 of us can meet together and have any
Right, I
discussion we would like,
under
because we do not constitute a quorum. That is,
Correct.
I'm 100% certain on that. The second question, I've never, in my reading on the FOI and my attending the session, that was really not brought up as a rule, and I was never told anything about that. So I would be very doubtful that is a concern.
I only bring it up because I have heard it from several different people, and I'd really like a clarification.
Yeah, if we can get it more official, that's fine, but
Thank you.
I'd be surprised. Okay. Anybody else with FOI question or concern? FOI is a responsibility for each and every one of us. So when you see us, if you see me, if you see us as a group stepping into a place where we probably shouldn't step, please raise your hand and ask. It's better to be considerate and be safe than lead the town into a problem. So let's be cognizant as best we can, and researching Barbara's question is I think part of that. So thank Kate, thanks for taking that on again. Okay, so the fourth item is the Arbor Haven presentation, and we barely have 15 minutes left. And I did promise Barbara a comment period at the end. The, the other items, and I'm hoping to be able to hear from Dave Lober for a couple minutes at least. The items 6 and 7 for box and the shells and maize are holdovers from the last meeting, and we will again hold those over to the next meeting. But I didn't want to lose them, so I attached them to the agenda with no real expectation we'd cover them
Tim,
tonight.
what are those items? What items? So I can, items 6 and
Items
7?
6 and 7. Sorry, Sharon, for going fast. So Arbor Haven, I believe to Kate's question, really brought it up at the beginning before we started the presentation. We've not been asked for anything officially from the Board of Selectmen, but I do feel that it's having taken all your time, having taken the Arbor Haven development team's time, that we should give back to the Board of Selectmen our thoughts. And you know, and I'm going to be hesitant perhaps about having too much discussion tonight. We don't have a lot of time, number one. Number two, it's good to let things sink in a little bit. And I do have a suggestion on what we do, which is basically to write up a short report for the Board of Selectmen. And I have some thoughts of how to organize that, but I will take, a few comments if you have thoughts about the follow-up and what we should do from here. I certainly would be open to, hearing your comments.
I'll speak again first.
Okay,
First.
go ahead, Barbara.
I really feel that we should discuss it a little bit more when we have the time to look into what the answers were to us and what our questions still are or might be or whatever. So I believe that before we write a report, I don't know whether we all meet together again or in some special meeting or how we work this, but I really think it's something that is important to discuss.
Okay. Kate, you were about to say something, or?
I agree. I think that throughout this process, we've done a good job of generating questions, but I think the larger question as conservation is, what's the point of conserving the land? I ride my bike past there twice a day on my way to work. It's not set up to be a recreational facility right now, passive, because the parking lots have been degraded to the point of not usable. So if the Conservation Commission is going to take a position on this being developed or not developed, then I think we need to have a better sense of why. And then I would like us to have a larger conversation about sustainability in a regional, not just Woodbridge, and what the impact is of taking land that is close to New Haven, accessible to water, sewer, and public transportation, and deeming it as conserved land. And I think that's probably going to be a long, not necessarily easy conversation for our group to have. So I don't know that we should start that at 9 o'clock at night, but those are concerns that I
No.
have.
Okay. Anybody else might want to make a comment?
I feel like being a new organization, a new group and not really even totally understanding the responsibility of conserving land and some of the things that are at risk if that land gets built up totally is a question that we maybe need to think about more internally so that we can do a better job of protecting the land. And as a wetlands, I mean, in wetlands, we always did site visits, and I don't know if it makes any sense to think of a site visit at some point before it gets too cold so that we know the land that we're actually thinking of helping conserve or not, putting our effort into that, because that might be a valid thing to do, is a special meeting where we all meet for a half hour and walk the land a little bit.
Especially if some of us haven't done that, that would, I think, be a wonderful thing to do.
Uh,
Um,
I feel that these are very educational seminars, and that we're getting more and more insight about. I did it today, um, and personally, I have a concern about the HOA. I have a concern about that part of it, and I do not think, uh, based on selling HOAs, based on having an HOA in my lifetime, that it's going to be easier said than done for anyone to have access to anything that other people are paying on. I do not believe that, and I'm a little concerned that they would even present that. That's almost against HOA, allow anybody to come in and to think that they can have free access to something that other people are paying on. That's the whole point of an HOA, is that you are paying on something and that you have the right for. That's part of your association. That is part of your insurance. That is what you're paying your dues on. And so even if you do have an easement, and I know what an easement is, I don't think that we're going to have access that easily to everything that is inclusive in that development when you have an HOA. And that's my opinion.
So Valerie, let me just understand that what you're saying is because it's easier to sell to the town, that we don't have to maintain the roads and we don't have to do this, and it's easier to sell it to the town, that there's nice walking trails. The reality is that if these people are paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for that, they're going to want to feel like they have something that the rest of the town doesn't have. And right now, that's just not true. That because the town would have access to all the walkways and the pool and the tennis courts, and so they really are just stuck with a bill and not with any benefit. And you don't think they're going to like that?
I don't think that's part of an HOA is, he also said that was private property. And if they're paying on that, and then he said later on that, well, you probably can't go in at 3 in the morning. So that was the first restriction he said. And
Mhm.
so he admitted that. So he didn't start off by saying that, but when the subject was broached, he said, well, you can't go in at 3, and then it's going to be other things. Well, because it's an HOA, that means that that's their, when you have an HOA, you have property lines. Whenever you have any type of development, or even deed on your own deed, you have a property line. So if they're saying that they're maintaining it and then they're paying on it, and they're probably going to be paying taxes on it too. And if they get a security guard up there, which I'm sure that they may want to do, have a security force for that HOA, then how can anybody from anywhere just go in and start riding their bikes without any kind of uh verification, ID verification? Or I just don't see that really happening, that you can just go into any subdevelopment and just do what you want when it's a private property.
Right. So David, do you feel like the town has taken this up as terms of the selectmen as a concern of theirs, and when they hear this presentation?
Um, I I think this presentation was accepted by the town, by the first selectman, because they're interested in selling the property and getting whatever potential income they can get from it. And they really haven't expressed a lot of concern. I think the reason that they're sending it out to the various commissions is so that you can evaluate it and decide, what your recommendations are, what your reservations are, and what you vis-a-vis your own commission, what you think should be done, what you think should be questioned, what you think should be changed, what things should be pinned down. When I listen to these presentations, I get a lot of "we don't know."
Yeah.
If you ask a question, you really want an answer, and then you get the answer as well after the referendum. Then we'll do all of this work.
Mhm.
Okay.
Exactly.
So,
You may or may not find that acceptable. I don't know.
so let me make my comment, sort of bouncing off what Kate said, and then tell you what my thought was of how we move forward. Um, Kate, I love what you said. I do think it's going to be a long, hard conversation, as you said. Um, my sense is, though, that what to sort of what Dave just said, very much in line. What he said, I think the Board of Selectmen are looking for responses to this specific proposal. I wish we had, 6 months, a year to talk through, Kate, what you brought up and think about things at a larger level. What would be best to do with the property, those type of discussions. That'd be great to have, but we haven't had them, and now we're faced with this proposal, and I think we should respond to it and respond much in the way that Dave just suggested. So in my thought, in take people's, perhaps maybe the next thing to do is to get together and just talk about it. We could do that. But what I had thought perhaps is that I could ask each of you, again, to send some comments to me, and I'll be a little more specific about that in a minute. And then take three of us, as a working group, to assemble the comments and put it into a shape that would be almost appropriate to send to the Board of Selectmen, and then come back together, perhaps in a special meeting dedicated just to that, and make sure everybody on the commission agrees, and just work it a little bit till it's ready to send. And and if you want to write down these words very quickly, I would, if we were to go down that path, then I would ask each of you to send me, number one, your observations about the proposal, and those, to me, those are the factuals. The things that are factual that you can say about it. Number two, your concerns. So Val, you just highlighted a very big concern of yours, and I think some of others of us have it. So you send your concerns. Three, and this one might be a little controversial, but I call it recommendations for changes if this were to be approved. And Dave had a much more succinct way of saying that. I wish I had written that down, but I'll just say recommendations for changes if the proposal is approved. With the thought that, if the townspeople approve it, we certainly want to try to get some things changed about it. And then, fourth section, any other comments? And I think that little team, if we have the little team of three, we can try to weave those together, not with a guarantee that every single item will go in as such, but we'll put that together and bring it back to the group.
Tim,
Yeah.
I really don't like that idea.
Okay,
I don't think we're ready for that.
All right.
And I don't think we need to be recommendations if it's approved, because I think we really have to first decide if it's really the best thing. I mean, that's already like, we're up on our back, like,
Yeah.
I don't, that just really
I-
concerns me.
I-
It's like,
Can I just jump in here for a second? I'm sorry, I think go ahead. Okay, I think it would be easier if you reviewed the charge to the commission to see what you're actually, what your concerns actually are, vis-a-vis, land to be conserved. And look at it in those terms.
Yes, and I have, and I can actually put up the charge and share that now. I think I can share it, if Matthew lets me. It's the preservation, conservation, and development of natural resources within the town of Woodbridge. I guess my thought on this is that it's not up to us whether this is going to go forward or not. And it's not up to the Board of Selectmen either. It's up to the townspeople. But I certainly would like to be able to get on the table those things that would need to be changed in the proposal that would make it.
well, I would think density would be the first thing. I mean,
Excuse me?
100, there's no other development that's ever had 145 homes. So even the fact that we're considering that density is startling to me, because that's huge.
And I'm going to
If we
say
can-
this, and this, hold on, Tim. I'm going to say this, and this is going to probably be tough to hear, but I don't agree with that. I actually, there's not consensus that that is too dense in this committee.
Okay,
it's-
that's fine,
so-
but
Yeah.
I mean, Kate, it seems like one thing you'd like is the affordable housing part of it. And it seems like really only such a small part of it serves that reality. And that I understand that within 20 or 30 or 40 years, that goes away too. It's a very time limited thing. So I'm just feel like for that issue, this hardly serves that issue at all.
Correct. This is not if we were trying to Goldilocks our way into what would be a perfect development if we were going to do a development town. Does it fit for what? That is like almost like a personal in the House of Rosen decision versus looking at it from the Conservation Commission.
Didn't really
So-
understand that you said, but
Okay.
I understand it's not.
So we had two thoughts on the table, I guess, to go forward. One is to have the, I think, special meeting to just have a further discussion about what we heard tonight and just try to get everything out of the table. And the second was my option is to have you each send the items I talked about and try to have a small team coalesce that if we can, and then have the discussion after that.
Tim, can I just address that a little bit? I think with what David said is what our charge is. I'd like to kind of really talk about that as a group and understand what, given our charge, what we think would be the best thing. And then maybe have a small group that once we suss that out, but I don't feel like we've been looking at this enough through that lens as a group to make a,
You're talking about our general charge as a conservation commissioner or our charge
Yeah,
as far
like-
as this proposal?
no, as a conservation commission, is as our role as conservers of the natural environment, how do we hope to do that with this piece of land?
Well, okay.
Because,
Would you like
because
me to put up the
what-
charge?
sure, but do you think right now is the time to do that? I just think that,
It's two lines, one sentence.
okay, go for it.
If I can share it, I will put it up. I mean, I think that's a fairly, yeah, come on, I already have it open. Why do I have to do this? Give me a second.
Do you want to just read it to us?
I tried to quote it before. I think it's there at the top. I don't know how to make this bigger. So it's the first two lines. Disregard the below. We'll go through that.
So, but in that, is that the present preservation and the development of natural resources? It's not development, it's development of natural resources and conservation of natural resources.
It's the preservation, development, and conservation of natural resources, including water resources.
Okay. So, I mean,
So
so are we living up to our commission? I mean, how do we live up to that? Do we live up to that? That's my question.
well, I mean, ideally, we would be, to me, out in front of a lot of things and making recommendations um, before we got into a situation where the Board of Selectmen had a proposal that they've now sent to us and asked it be presented to us. We have an option not to do anything, not and just say, well, that was nice, and go on with our agenda. But I do, my own thought is that this is an opportunity to um, comment on what we've heard so that we are able to give some input and give some concerns, thoughts on the presentation to the Board of Selectmen, and to frankly deliver some messages in a report. I think we have to limit the report, to the proposal and what the proposal is, and be about the proposal. But I think we can put some messages in there. 'Cause I don't think we've had a lot of communication with the Board of Selectmen over recent time. And this is an opportunity to start to get some messaging going.
But I would think because of this charge, and I guess other people feel differently, that our recommendation is to preservation of land. So why would we be in favor of 140 houses on a piece of land? I mean, I think the housing board might and the zoning board might but why would we as a conservation commission? Barbara's saying that she's totally cut off, so she cannot see or hear anything. Does anyone have an ability to help her out?
Should that be a signal that we've already gone 4 minutes over
Yeah,
our stated time?
my
If
goal.
Barbara's signals are no longer letting her in, then this is a big conversation that I think we need to have as a group, and I don't want to do it in a rushed
Yeah.
way after we've been already meeting for an hour and
Okay.
and
So I'm going to respond to her. So should someone put forth that we propose a special meeting and close this meeting now?
Tim, you're the chair. What would you like to do?
If the members think that, having a special meeting and batting around first is the right way to go, then let's do that. I don't want to cut off the discussion. I was hoping to, try to save a little people's time by sort of collecting the comments and then trying to see where we had agreement and could compose most of the report, and then it's, maybe the conclusion, and whether there's a recommendation, if we want to make one at all, to go forward or not with this, that we discuss in the special meeting. If we meet first, then we'll have a lot of discussion. We're still gonna have to write everything down and come together and make sure it's right, so.
Sharon, what was your objection to Tim's wanting to do observations and have those be written within the group?
Hold on, including Barbara in this conversation by having her on the phone. Barbara? Yeah. I'm just including you in the conversation by just having you on the phone, okay? Okay, so maybe she can hear us. I just feel like, oh my gosh, that we, I'm just not ready to make recommendations on this proposal yet without a lot more understanding of where each of us stand on it so that we can either be truly unified or truly ununified. But if three of us go off and make a proposal, then others will have to refute it or, and then it could even become more complicated. And this is like the biggest thing that's before us and might be before us in the next 10 years. And I don't feel a great rush to get the selectmen who aren't even asking for our opinions yet, what they are.
So then why don't we just strike the third item from Tim's list, which was the recommendations? I mean, I think it's a worthwhile exercise for all of us to gather the factuals, concerns, and other comments, and then, to use
But
that
would
as
it be so hard for us to meet again in 2 weeks or something or even at the
No,
next meeting? Is
no.
there a time frame on this, David, that you need to get our comments by?
Not that I know of, and there's not going to be a referendum now with the COVID restrictions because you can't have you can't have remote voting, you can't have
True.
absentee ballots during. You can't have absentee ballots for referendum, so it's got to be an in-person vote.
So we have some time on this.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
Right now,
that's good point.
it's kind of there's no timeline on it.
Okay.
So
So why
could
don't
we
we-
even do it at the next meeting and all gather our thoughts and maybe write something up together on the next meeting or have a special committee after the next meeting?
We could do that. Is that the preference rather than meeting
Well,
in
that's
2 weeks?
mine,
as you
but
said?
I'm only one of the people. Barbara,
Is this worth
do
a
you hear
special?
any of this? So the question is, I think Tim has wanted to, here, I'll mute myself so you guys don't have to hear this.
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
For Tim,
yes.
for me, I would like to do more research about my issue. I am not an attorney, but I would like to do more issue about that the HOA because once if it is an HOA and if we vote this in, we will not have access to the bike trails. So that's a big part of it. So, but I am not an attorney, and I would like to do the research. That's a big thing that people I really think need to understand. Some covenants are enforceable, and some are not, and they've that has been upheld in courts. So that's a big issue
Yep.
that I think we should really have a handle on
Okay.
because it comes down
So-
to it does come down to the preservation of land and how we use it. And if that becomes something that we are not going to be able to use once they establish that, then I think that may change a lot of people's opinion. And that maybe this is not the right plan. This particular plan may not be the right plan.
Okay.
Well,
So I think for that reason,
And Barbara also said she'd like to meet again. For that other piece of input that I just
well,
talked
okay.
to her and she's
All right.
fading in
Why-
and out, so she
Yeah.
can't communicate with us.
Why don't we decide then, or that we will make this uh, the primary topic of our next regular meeting in November. And that meeting in November, I just want to check it. It's not conflicting with Thanksgiving. I don't think it's Thanksgiving is on the 25th. We meet on the 18th. So we will make that, given the late, David, given the late time, we will will not be able to hear from David tonight. Usually very interesting. Barbara's impeded, so we can't get her item. So I will probably lead off with those two at that next meeting. And then we will dedicate the rest of the time to maybe approve of the minutes as another item and then this item. Fair enough?
Okay with me.
Yep. My apologies, David. We didn't quite make it. And
Not needed. I'm looking for something for you, okay?
I- excuse me?
No, I just, I'm
Hopefully
looking-
there was some,
I'll send it to you when I find it, okay.
okay. So there's a benefit to you for having sat through the presentation again. Thank you, everybody. And we will, with that, I guess I make a motion to close the meeting, adjourn the meeting. I
I'll second.
think we need a second for that.
I'll second.
Very good. Thank you. Sharon, you got everything?
I hope so.
Okay, all in favor of adjournment?
All in
Fine.
favor?
I think I heard a majority.
What time is
So
it?
thank you all very much. You have a good week.
9:28, Sharon.
9:28. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right.
That was my job, huh? All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you,
Bye.
Matthew.